Now, this new Observer article is an absolute bombshell. It confirms a lot of the things we knew, but when something's written down, in black and white, it's still absolutely astonishing. Now, this Observer article is about what happened behind the scenes when Jeremy Corbyn was leader. More specifically, it talks about Labour Together and Morgan McSweeney and his plot to get rid of the left and Jeremy Corbyn and allow the rise for Keir Starmer. Now, the article was titled, Corbyn had flown too close to the sun, how Labour insiders battled the left and plotted the party's back to power. So we're going to go through this article and we're going to pick it apart. This is so important. This is this kind of story, and we cover a lot of stories on Turn Left, but obviously it's the origin of Turn Left. I mean, the first video was about Jeremy Corbyn being suspended. So this article, this story is so important. It's so significant. And it is just astonishing. Exclusive extract from New Book says Corbyn's appearance at Glastonbury was a key moment in the party's long way back to power. And as one anti-Corbyn group tried to build a moderate coalition, it also needed a credible leader. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn, the chant rang out across the huge crowd. Tens of thousands of people in the shadow of Glastonbury's pyramid stage, pacing slightly, dressed in a blue linen shirt and loose beige trousers. Jeremy Corbyn hollered into the microphone. The commentariat got it wrong, he declared, to a deafening rolling cheer. The elites got it wrong. And he is obviously correct. A camera swung across the crowd, an image of a child sitting on the father's shoulders, clapping his hands above his head, flashed up on the screens flanking the stage. The chant from the crowd bubbled up again, spreading across the elated throng as Corbyn, who had turned just 68, waved out at the sea of bodies, and Glastonbury's founder, Michael Eavis, joined him and wrapped an arm around him. It was the 24th of June 2017, and the Labour leader had never been stronger. Some in Labour make fun of the idea that Corbyn supporters treat the 2017 election like a victory, when in fact it was a loss. But in reality, the Labour leader had defied his detractors, who were expecting a repeat of Michael Foot's 1983 election drubbing, and instead watched Corbyn strip Theresa May of her parliamentary majority. Moreover, Corbyn had won 40% of the national vote, more than 35% that handed Tony Blair a significant majority in 2005. In the short term, at least, this unexpected result muzzled Corbyn's most vocal internal critics, who had claimed that voters would always reject his brand of left-wing politics. Now, to be fair to the article, it is completely correct here. Look, those of us who supported Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party in 2017 never said that Labour won, right? And the criticisms we get is we act like it was a win. But the context here is, one, we were told that Jeremy Corbyn was completely unelectable. Number two, polling showed that Labour were up for, honestly, it was going to be one of the worst election defeats since, well, Michael Foot. So in terms of polling, the commentariat were right. And number three, Jeremy Corbyn didn't have the establishment on side. He had so many internal critics, which obviously makes Jeremy and the party look completely divided. Also, he didn't have big money backers. So when you add all of that in, it was a recipe for disaster. Yet Jeremy Corbyn added 10% of the vote since 2015. That's 3 million extra votes just in 2 years. It was the highest increase of percentage since 1945. And as that article pointed out, it beat out Tony Blair's 35%. So it was, in terms of vote share, incredible. The fact that the entire establishment was against Jeremy Corbyn, he stripped Theresa May's majority, it was very significant, and that's why he stayed on as leader. So there was a lot to celebrate, because we were told this left-wing politics could not win, and it showed Jeremy Corbyn was more electable than Tony Blair in 2005, than Gordon Brown in 2010, and Ed Miliband in 2015. Meanwhile, some 130 miles away in South London Park, Morgan McSweeney was sitting on a bench, thinking about what the scene at Glastonbury meant for his new job. The day after the 8th of June general election, he had left the local government association to run a new parliamentary group funded by two donors, businessman and philanthropist Trevor Chin and hedge fund owner Martin Taylor, two of the guys that you want inside the Labour Party, who obviously represent the working class. Labour Together, as the operation became known, was explicitly not about trying to defeat Corbyn through any internal coup. They now considered that to be impossible. Obviously, because in 2016 we had the chicken coup, we had essentially a public-facing coup where most MPs voted no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. That triggered a second leadership contest, and Jeremy Corbyn won by an even bigger margin. There could have been 1,000 elections, and Jeremy Corbyn would have won every single time. So they knew that Corbyn was popular with the membership. They couldn't do, I call it a front-facing coup, because as we get into the article, you'll see this is a coup. To defeat Jeremy Corbyn and to kick out the left of the party, it was a coup. It was just done behind closed doors. But it would try to defeat Corbynism and the Corbynite who would inevitably run in any future contest to lead the party. Now we had Rebecca Long Bailey, who was the sort of Corbynite. You had Keir Starmer, who was Corbyn in a suit. Basically, every single contender for the leadership accepted Jeremy Corbyn's mandate of 2015, and also accepted the radical economic policies. They knew that they had to pander to that in order to win the membership. That's why Keir Starmer had his 10 pledges, which he completely lied about. He had no plans to stick with those policies. It was a complete lie. Sitting on that park bench, McSweeney was among those who took the 2017 result very seriously and believed that Corbyn, whose politics he despised, a more ethical foreign policy, reducing inequality, ending poverty and homelessness. Apparently, Morgan McSweeney despised that. Believed that Jeremy Corbyn could win the next election. That's really important to note, right? Despite these people going to the media saying Jeremy Corbyn can't win an election, he's unelectable, that was again a lie. They were worried that he could win an election. If they thought he was unelectable, they probably wouldn't even intervene. They'd probably just sit back and wait for it to happen. But they were so scared that he could become prime minister, they had to throw shit at the wall and hope something sticks. And for this period, it was, oh, he's unelectable. But clearly, Morgan McSweeney is, probably before 2017, but especially after 2017, were thinking, oh my God, he could be prime minister. We need to do something about him. Counterintuitively, he finds the Glastonbury scene reassuring. McSweeney later told a friend that he saw this as Corbyn's Icarus moment, in which he imagined the Labour leader standing backstage at Glastonbury with a choice: take that election result and turn to the country to cement the deal, or walk into the warm embrace of festival goers who, McSweeney believed, were unrepresentative of the wider electorate. To him, Corbyn had just flown too close to the sun. As I discussed on No Justice's channel yesterday, two things can be true. You can speak to the choir, but also you can then reach other parts of the country. I love this line actually from Tim Waltz, who says, people accuse me of speaking to the choir, but actually I want them to sing. You need to drum up your own supporters. They're the people that are going to get people to vote. They're going to knock on doors, going to tell people about Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. So going to Glastonbury is a really weird thing for McSweeney to be like, aha, that was what sowed the seeds of his downfall. He went to Glastonbury, but also he went to parts of the country that were left behind. McSweeney made clear his mission to those gathered in, including Steve Reed's parliamentary office, to move the Labour Party from the hard left when JC steps down as leader and to reconnect the party with the country and build a sustainable winning electoral coalition. Well, how did that work out for you? Because Keir Starmer, yes, won a big majority off the back of the Conservatives being essentially wiped out because of reform largely, and also 14 years of austerity, and basically no one wanted the Tories in. They got less votes than Jeremy Corbyn in not just 2017, but 2019 as well. Now, 2019 was supposed to be the worst election defeat since 1935, yet Keir Starmer got less votes, right? Not only that, but now the polling is showing that Labour have dropped down to 29%. Keir Starmer is one of the most unpopular new prime ministers ever. And the Tories have now actually climbed their poll lead to around, I think it was either 24% or 26%. Either way, Labour are only ahead by 4 to 6%, which is obviously in election-winning territory. Like, I don't expect the Conservatives to win. Reform are going to be, they're going to increase their vote share by the next election, which is why I expect Labour to win again. But like when you see polling where you got one party is only 4 or 5% ahead of the other party, that's almost like standard polling in every single election. So no, the Labour Party don't have an electoral winning coalition. In fact, they have no coalition. They have no base. Their vote is entirely malleable. What the 2024 election showed, as what all of us predicted, was that the people only wanted to get rid of the Tories. It was not an endorsement of the Labour Party, which is proof now because since Labour have acted exactly the same as the Conservatives, are cutting winter fuel payments, are keeping the two-child benefit cap, are saying that we're going to do austerity. They're changing nothing. People are not looking at the Labour Party thinking, we like these guys. In fact, no one likes them, but the only one because of the anti-Tory vote. They have no base anymore. They decided that upon chucking Jeremy Corbyn out and as many left-wing members as possible, they also said we do not want a base, which is ridiculously stupid. Even Tony Blair understood that you still need your base. Even though he shat on his base, he at least, kept some lefties in the party. So Morgan McSweeney and those with Labour Together are not smart electoral strategists. They were just lucky that they were in power at a time when the Conservatives were so unpopular. Dagenham MP John Cruddas and McSweeney even arranged a meeting with Corbyn himself to present the project as consensual. Sitting in the boardroom of the leader of the opposition's offices, they told him about Labour Together, saying they were planning a renewal project. I don't understand why there needs to be a renewal project after 2017. The 2017 election just showed actually the Labour Party had engaged in renewal, right? They lost the 2010 election, the 2015 election, right? And, we were even asking ourselves, could Labour win a majority ever again? No one was enthusiastic about the Labour Party, not to mention young people who aren't engaged in the political process anyway. But Jeremy Corbyn's leadership spoke to non-voters, spoke to young people, and the 2017 election showed that there was a high turnout and a record number of young people voted. That was the renewal. So why were Labour Together sitting down with Jeremy Corbyn saying, oh, by the way, I know you've successfully got people to come out and vote. I know you've managed to galvanise young people, which no other politician has done before or for a very long time. No political party has managed to do, but you have. So here's us trying to renew the Labour Party. Obviously, it's a load of crap. And it says here, reportedly, one of Corbyn's aides leaned back in his chair, scrolling through social media, not paying much attention to what they were saying. Understandably, because he knew they were full of shit. And Jeremy Corbyn didn't have to capitulate to the right of the party. He got his mandate. He got his mandate as leader when he won the leadership election twice. And he also got a further mandate when he went to the country and got 12 million votes, got 40% of the vote, right? There was no mandate for the right to get involved. That was at the point where Jeremy Corbyn should have cleared out the party of those that undermined Labour. Early plans focused on building a relationship with at least one trade union, positioning themselves on the left, thus able to reach out to Corbyn supporters. Again, that was a load of shit. They don't care about unions. They didn't want to be left-wing. They just wanted to pretend to be left-wing to try and get some Jeremy Corbyn supporters and then completely flip their positions, which, fast forward to 2020, is exactly what they did. They appealed to Jeremy Corbyn voters, and they said, oh, we absolutely support Jeremy Corbyn's economic policies. Keir Starmer said that 2017 was the foundational document. It was all a lie. As soon as he was elected, they planned this from the beginning, that he would drop all those policies and he would attack the left. McSweeney was concerned that if Corbyn became Prime Minister, it would prevent the party renewal Labour Together sought. Of course, because Labour Together, right, their interests were not of workers, were not of unions. Their interests, as we will further discuss when we talk about money in a second, their interests was of capital and the political elite, right? Whereas Jeremy Corbyn was an anathema to that. Jeremy Corbyn supported a massive redistribution of power and wealth from the elite, from the millionaires or the multimillionaires and billionaires to the working class. So, of course, Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister was against Labour Together because Labour Together wanted to destroy any meaningful opposition to capital within the Labour Party and solidify the Labour Party being the capital B party. So, how much funding did this small parliamentary group attract and why? Sources tell me that Reid met Chin and Taylor through Cruddas and the political thinker Maurice Gladsman, who were already receiving financial support for their blue Labour ideas, i.e. right-wing Labour. Before 2017, Chin and Taylor decided to take a punt and offered £75,000 to cover the cost of some early research and the first member of staff. So who gives 75 grand just like that? They don't, unless they want some kind of return on investment. There's a reason why money exchange hands. And when there's money in the political process, you bet it's not good for the working class. When McSweeney took over the director role after the election, the group bid for more backing, winning around 150 grand. So the money's now going up over 3 years, with perhaps £500,000 by the time the Labour leadership campaign of 2020 got underway after Corbyn's resignation post uh, the 2019 election. So Keir Starmer, as over the years we've uncovered, I mean, Declassified UK have done some brilliant work about who has funded Keir Starmer, and a part of that has been Morgan McSweeney and Labour together, because there's been big money behind Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer represents the rich and powerful. Jeremy Corbyn's funding came from unions and then came from small donors, right? If you want to understand politicians' positions, right, follow the money. It is as simple as that. It was also helped by the implicit backing of the deputy leader, Tom Watson. That scumbag told funders he was keen that a number of groups focused on Labour renewal should flourish. Watson's association lent the group credibility with donors and attracted some of its early MPs into the fold. That guy is a massive scumbag, and I feel terrible because when I was a Labour member, I voted for Jeremy Corbyn as leader, and we also got the chance to vote for a deputy leader, and I voted for Tom Watson. There was no other viable candidate, and at the time, Tom Watson seemed pretty good. He was really strong on Leveson and The Sun, which, as I spoke to No Justice yesterday, I pointed out, he's very, very quiet on Leveson too. But Tom Watson, his entire role in the Labour Party was to undermine Jeremy Corbyn, and there were, obviously it was leaked that the Labour Party or Lotto tried to get rid of Tom Watson, and it shows they were completely justified. Tom Watson should have won. In the interest of democracy, right? He should have been absolutely removed from his post. But there were mistakes. Early on, Labour Together failed to declare £730,000 in donations from multi-millionaire venture capitalists and businessmen, resulting in an electoral commission investigation and a fine, though the group blamed human error and said they themselves had self-reported. £730,000 from venture capitalists and businessmen to stop Jeremy Corbyn. All involved were always clear that they would need a candidate to win a future leadership election on the political platform we are developing, but they each put a different level of emphasis on that motivation. For McSweeney and Reid, choosing the best person to try to win Labour back from the left was absolutely central. Reid wanted to draw in realms of data and apply rigorous analysis to decide who they should put forward. McSweeney wanted to find the character most likely to win a general election, but Cruddas, who had led policy reviews for the former leader Ed Miliband, Labour Together was far more of an intellectual pursuit to a policy platform than could unite the party in the future. They wanted to find the perfect candidate for this, so they needed someone with no baggage, who wasn't that well known, and who wouldn't piss off the left. So they couldn't get any Blairites in there because we would see right through them. So they needed to get an unknown candidate, or a candidate who seemed quite radical in the past, and that's Keir Starmer. There are so many old videos where he's like, I stand up for Palestine, I stand up for striking workers, and you saw the material in the leadership election, and he largely had a blank slate. So he was a good candidate to essentially be the front man for Labour Together, to pretend he was very left-wing and then to switch up as soon as he was elected. Interestingly, in a SWOT analysis, McSweeney claims that one of the key problems that Labour might encounter was a Labour government, making explicit that his concern was not whether Corbyn could win, but that if he were to become Prime Minister, it would prevent the renewal they were focused on. More proof that the Labour right did not want Labour to win a general election under Jeremy Corbyn. Now, how many times do they call the left purists and they say that, oh, well, you'll only support the Labour Party if they're exactly left-wing like you are. You don't compromise. That is pure projection, right? Many people compromised under Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn compromised on many policies himself, right? But you can see here there was literal briefing to the media. There was internal cues. There were public-facing cues. There was money changing hands to stop Jeremy Corbyn from winning because they didn't want his brand of politics. Talk about gaslighting. After a few months working from a park bench, the group funded a small office in Vauxhall, and soon it reached out to former Labour advisors to work alongside him with a focus on online anti-Semitism. In an early review, they identified problem posts in hundreds of Facebook groups with links to either the party or left-wing politics. Some of these were aimed at Labour's female Jewish MPs. They then farmed out the posts they uncovered to journalists who were themselves reporting on rising evidence of anti-Semitism on the left, together with a row over whether the party would adopt all the examples linked to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. The scandal was becoming increasingly destabilising for Corbyn. There we have it. Now, that is the biggest bombshell from the Observer article, right? We know for a fact that the Labour right faction weaponized anti-Semitism to attack the left for factional gain. We know that. We had the Labour leaks, we had the Ford report, right? And also we knew that before the report came out, we were like, we know this is happening, right? There is anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. There is anti-Semitism among the left. However, right, this an anti-Semitism crisis was completely manufactured because typically, if you were a Labour member or Labour voter, statistically, you were less anti-Semitic than the Conservative Party than UKIP. I mean, No Justice pointed out that I think only the party that harbours less anti-Semitic attitudes were the Lib Dems. But essentially saying there was no more anti-Semitism in the Labour Party than any other political party. Yet we had years of this idea that the Labour Party, especially the Labour left, brought this new wrinkle of anti-Semitism, and now it was a hotbed of anti-Semitism. You know I've covered it for years and years how that's a load of crap, but we have now got confirmation here that this anti-Semitism crisis was completely manufactured with people from the likes of Morgan McSweeney. We have now found its origins. Morgan McSweeney and Labour together. And you can see there that as early as 2017, they trawled through left-wing Facebook groups to try and find examples of anti-Semitism. It's not that the media found examples of anti-Semitism bubbling up and they reported on it. No, we had a faction, which is the Labour right faction, trawl through just left-wing groups to find examples of anti-Semitism and then hand it to the media, and then the media could report on it saying, oh my God, the left's anti-Semitic. Oh my God, the Labour Party's anti-Semitic. That is the Labour right overblowing cases of anti-Semitism for factional gain, right? Something that Jeremy Corbyn was suspended for and now subsequently removed from the party for daring to claim the truth, which is that anti-Semitism is wrong. We have found cases of anti-Semitism. We're doing our best to drive it out. However, I'm going to be truthful here. The cases of anti-Semitism are very, very small, and there were people inside and outside the party that overstated it dramatically for political gain. And everyone in the media, in all political parties said, oh my God, Jeremy Corbyn is downplaying anti-Semitism. It is so serious. How dare he? He's an anti-Semite himself. When he has once again been vindicated, right? He is right. Anti-Semitism was dramatically, I mean dramatically overstated for political gain. And we can see right here, it started from Labour Together and Morgan McSweeney simply because Morgan McSweeney hated Jeremy Corbyn and his kind of politics, and he wanted to turn the Labour Party from a grassroots, working class trade union party to another capital party to mirror the Conservatives. Morgan McSweeney and his cabal support the rich, support capital. That's why there was millions of pounds being thrown around among Labour Together. That's why they chucked a couple of £100,000 to Change UK to act as spoiler candidates in order to try and undermine the Labour Party. That's why they did this. And for years, they thought, we need to come up with ways to undermine the project. They admitted it themselves. The author of this article is admitting it themselves. First of all, they tried the chicken coup, which failed on its ass, embarrassingly. They thought, we can't do this publicly anymore. What we're going to do is find another way. Another way was Change UK. That failed. Then it was, let's try and get Tom Watson involved, which clearly worked. And then they finally found their silver bullet, and it was anti-Semitism. And that is such a hard thing to try and fight against, to try and win this war against the media and the Labour right, because it still happens today. There is people's lives, as No Justice pointed out yesterday, people's lives have been ruined. People's careers have been ruined because they've been tarred with anti-Semitic smears, right? And it has gone so far beyond the realm of just factional infighting. It is everywhere. To this day, what Jeremy Corbyn is one of the most anti-racist MPs ever has now been turned into Hitler 2.0. As for The Guardian smoozing, I witnessed that firsthand. At the time, I was the joint political editor at the newspaper and found myself invited with colleagues to a dinner in a private dining room in the basement of Brown's in Covent Garden. We sat on red chairs with gold trimming, sat around a long, thin table covered with a white tablecloth, listening to McSweeney. I mean, really working class event that is, isn't it? You know, this is about how can we support the working class in this nice little posh dinner that these people are going to. Lots of money behind there, you know, all very nice. Listening to McSweeney, Chris Reed, and Lisa Nandy, and also including Shabana Mahmood, tell us about Labour's Together's plans for renewal. They had brought with them another MP who was just starting to do more with the group, Keir Starmer. The project was pitched as planned with the soft, cuddly Greenpeace framing. They neatly sidestepped our more cynical questions about their plans for a future leadership. Alongside me that night was Guardian news editor Sam Bagger, I think that's how you say his name, who since told me he immediately wondered if Starmer was their candidate, even if McSweeney was wondering about Starmer as a possible leader as early as 2017. I mean, look, the Starmer leadership campaign officially started in 2018, so they already knew Starmer's their guy. It was not spoken about, and another hopeful also later emerged from the same group. Back then, the mere prospect of an opportunity to either take control of Labour's leadership or win a general election still felt very distant. But McSweeney was clear about the type of coalition he would need to build within Labour to support a future leadership bid, and was already reaching out to figures on the left of the party. In November 2017, sources describe a quiet and unassuming McSweeney turning up at Darlington Hall in Totnes for an away day organised by the soft left group Compass, run by Neil Lawson. There were people there linked to the socialist magazine Red Pepper and others closely aligned to Corbyn. Soon after 7 MPs left in February 2019, they resigned over Corbyn's leadership and founded a new party, Change UK. Labour Together sent a document to prospective donors, which has since been leaked to me. It warns that the Labour Party was politically and morally in a crisis, i.e. standing up for workers, claiming the hard left will divide our party, condemn us to electoral defeat, attempt to drive out democratic socialists, and corrupt our moral purpose in the interests of ideological aims. By the way, the Labour are the most ideological. They hate the left, right? And secondly, the idea that the left and Corbyn wanted to drive out democratic socialists, they were democratic socialists. We were democratic socialists. And it's the Labour right who are not only trying to drive out democratic socialists, but they're trying to drive out social democrats, right? The party that's supposedly a coalition between socialist unions and social democrats, right? Even if you believe in basic social democracy, you are too left-wing for the party, right? Notice how Keir Starmer isn't talking about ending neoliberalism and funding public services. He is supporting austerity. He wants to, they voted to scrap the winter fuel payments for pensioners and also wants to keep the two-child benefit cap, among other things, right? That's not even social democracy. So the idea that Jeremy Corbyn wanted to drive out democratic socialists is fucking gaslighting to, I couldn't even put a figure on it. It is insane. I mean, what do they think Jeremy Corbyn's politics was? Communist? I mean, seriously, if he's not democratic socialist, then what is he? Please, I'm actually asking these people because I'll be very interested to know. Whether it was written by McSweeney or not, I'm unsure, but the document set out 3 potential options for Labour's moderates. The first, who set up a new party, was rejected because the paper argued that every option to keep Labour together would be exhausted first. Well, they did try that with Change UK, and it failed miserably. Once it is attempted, there's no way back, it warned, arguing there was insufficient evidence that a new party could flourish in the UK's first-past-the-post system. The second, to try and attract 220,000 new members to Labour and to challenge Corbyn, which was then ruled out because by then Corbyn's 68% support among members, while slightly down, was too high to be challenged. The idea that so-called moderates, by the way, the right and hard right of the party, could attract 220,000 members. They couldn't attract fucking 50 people. They could attract big money donors, but 220,000 people? Insane. The idea that that was even touted is mad. The only person who had that reach with ordinary people was Jeremy Corbyn. And so, to the final option, to win a majority position from within the current Labour Party when Jeremy Corbyn leaves his position and or is defeated in a general election. The route we are travelling is the third one, the paper declared, before setting out why Labour Together believed it could find a winning candidate. And that's exactly what they did. They did an internal coup. They simply waited it out. They waited for Labour to lose an election. They waited for Jeremy Corbyn to stand down, but they couldn't field their own candidate just yet in terms of being honest. Like, oh, actually, we support privatization, we support austerity, because they know they would have got probably less than 4.5 Liz, right? They would have lost and came last. So what they manufactured was, let's get a candidate, i.e. Keir Starmer, who's a complete puppet, who has no principles, who could be moulded in their way and say, pretend you're left wing, pretend you're Jeremy Corbyn in a suit, win the membership, and then bend to our will. And that is exactly what has happened. The document made clear that these moderates saw as their problem a hard left in control of the party machinery, including Labour's National Executive Committee and most regional boards. To achieve their aims, they would need to dominate the communication channels that members most trusted, capture the political territory that the soft left cared about most, for example, social justice, and avoid the looming threat of sympathetic politicians facing deselection by a membership that had lost trust in MPs. Why do you think they lost trust in their MPs? Is it because they democratically elected Jeremy Corbyn twice and they saw their own MPs go against their will and try to undermine Jeremy Corbyn? And it's also very telling that they wanted to dominate the communication channels that members most trusted. Now, earlier on in the article, members equally trusted the Canary and the Guardian. And of course, the Canary can't be bought. They couldn't change it into a pro-Blairite publication. They had to destroy it. And then the Guardian, which is obviously not a left-wing publication, could easily be infiltrated. That's what they did. So they made the Guardian sympathetic to the Labour right and they destroyed the Canary. And of course, there were many people on the left who still read the Guardian. And that's why you did have a small section of the left saying, I like Jeremy Corbyn's policies, but he's a terrible leader and he needs to step down. And they fell for it, because at that point there was no other leader. Even if Jeremy Corbyn maybe isn't the strongest parliamentary party leader, maybe he's not the most effective communicator, whatever his flaws, there wasn't another left-wing candidate who was more polished that could take his place. It was Jeremy Corbyn or nothing, which is why I always were very skeptical of people who said, oh no, I supported Jeremy Corbyn in 2015, I really like his policies, but it's clear that he has to go and someone else needs to go. But he couldn't, because as soon as he went, Keir Starmer or someone else from Labour Together were ready to take their place. And now we have a Labour Party that is that's bought by billionaires. So it was Jeremy Corbyn or nothing. I wanted there to be a plethora of candidates behind Jeremy Corbyn, just in case if he lost the leadership. Just in case if he lost the election. And then we'd have a huge list of other left-wing candidates. That's what I wanted to see. But we didn't. We had Rebecca Long-Bailey, who didn't run the best leadership campaign, and then we had a false candidate in Keir Starmer, and that's all she wrote. So obviously you had the Labourites schmooze up to the client journalists and the entire media, bend to their will, and engaged in propaganda. What might the result at this summer's general election have looked like without the surge from Nigel Farage's Reform UK? At the time of writing, there is more analysis to do, but YouGov's Patrick English tells me that Labour would still win big, but with a much reduced majority. Around 60 Conservative MPs would have been saved, he reckons, leaving Starmer with a majority of around 80, closer to Boris Johnson in 2019 than Tony Blair in 1997. So an 80-seat majority would be a very good result still, but that is the same majority that the Conservatives got in 2019, and just 5 years later, it would have been reversed. So if you lose an 80-seat majority, that's not a complete wipeout of the political party. There's any chance that you could come back in the next election. So again, reform was the spoiler. The Labour Party absolutely loves reform. Paul Overden's job as Director of Political Strategy in Downing Street will be to think relentlessly about voters. In the early weeks, he delivered a briefing to cabinet members arguing that working class voters in marginal seats who switched to Labour from the Tories had delivered Starmer's majority, but it was the 20% of 2019 Conservatives who switched to Reform who had turned the win into a landslide. He also explains that Labour had slumped 3 points from 37% predicted by Labour's own pollsters to a 34% vote share in the final days of the campaign because of those who opted to vote tactically for the Lib Dems, where they could beat the Tories, but also others decided to go with their hearts by voting for the Greens or Independents in the certainty that Starmer would be Prime Minister either way. And he ended up with less votes than Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 and 2019, which is pathetic. The result is that Labour's voter coalition is far more fragile than the overall numbers suggest. Academic Rob Ford described Labour's 2024 strategy as a masterpiece of electoral agenda. It is not a masterpiece. Far from it, in which Labour withdrew the blocks from its safer seats close to the base to throw everything at the marginal constituencies and build up the height of the tower. However, Ford warns that it will not take much to bring this teetering tower tumbling down. Exactly. It's built on a house of cards. It's built on flimsy support, right? There's no foundational base. There's no energy. There's no commitment. It's simply just built on swing voters. Now, of course, you need swing voters to win an election, but you also need your own base. You need that solid foundation so that if you were to lose an election, at least you have your base, right? But what Starmer and Labour together and the Labour Party has done has completely shat on its base, told them to fuck off, right? And only base their support on Conservatives and swing voters, which is a stupid electoral strategy, which is why they're on 29%, which is why their power is so flimsy. Honestly, it's wafer thin. Labour understands only too well how stretched its majority is and how quickly the political mood can change. The question now is whether and how these factors might affect the way in which the party governs. Ovenden has told ministers that they must put Labour's majority out of the mind and imagine that they are nil-nil in the next political race. Jonathan Ashworth, who lost in Leicester South, very funny, and now leads Labour Together, which is, there's a reason why he's always on the screens, by the way, because he is now the head of Labour Together, and Labour Together, a powerful lobby group, are in bed with the client journalists. So, of course, Jonathan Ashworth, despite losing, right, despite the people telling him to piss off, he is everywhere because he is now in a position where he can schmooze with people. He is in a very good position. John Ashworth agreed, warning of a massive shift in how much voters change their minds. I am the talking, breathing proof that there is no such thing as a safe seat. We've gone from the Red Wall collapse in 2019 to a landslide victory in parliamentary seats. But that's not a foregone conclusion. It doesn't have to be that way. It's because the Labour Party completely destroyed their ideological base, destroyed their principles, so in seats which were safe, were lost. And it was lost to, shocker Adam, a left-wing independent. Because there were people who voted Labour were sick of the Labour Party, who went elsewhere. There is huge volatility these days, and we cannot assume we will win the next general election, he said. And that is why Keir Starmer's first speech to the Labour Party conference as Prime Minister is about urging no complacency, arguing that however big their 2024 win, there is no guarantee of a decade in power. If Labour fails to repair and rebuild trust, then when it comes to 2019, they could well lose. That is a very long video, but I wanted to go through the entire article because it's so important. So the things we've learned here is the anti-Semitism crisis, as we know, was completely manufactured, despite anti-Semitism still existing in politics. But we now have pinpointed the source, and that source is Morgan McSweeney through Labour Together, and they try to find a specific thing to undermine the left, not just in the Labour Party, but in the entire political landscape. And that brings us on to the Canary, my old workplace. They couldn't just settle for expelling left-wing members or getting rid of Jeremy Corbyn. They had to get rid of anything that was linked to a new kind of politics, and that was the Canary. It's insane. They wanted to rid the left from the entire political landscape. We've also learned that Keir Starmer was in the process of very much early on. And the final lesson we learn is the media. And the media to me are the biggest bad guys, right? I hate the Labour right with every fibre of my being. You guys know that. But the media are worse because the Labour right manufactured this anti-Semitism crisis, right? As this author has showed, either she's accidentally let slip or she bragged about it, that many people in the media knew that the Labour right were manufacturing the anti-Semitism crisis just so they could attack Jeremy Corbyn and the left. And they stayed silent for years. For years, good people are and were smeared as anti-Semites. Jeremy Corbyn was smeared as an anti-Semite. The entire left and socialists are continued to this day to be smeared as anti-Semites. This is one of the biggest reasons why Jeremy Corbyn is not in power. They stopped a progressive Labour government all because they didn't like the politics of the left that was won through democratic participation. And media pundits, right, like this author, knew. And they said nothing for years. They're suddenly saying it now. Oh, well, maybe, yeah, actually a lot of it was manufactured, but oopsie. Way to say it now when it's not important, when there's no threat of Jeremy Corbyn. This would have been really important. Has more mainstream outlets fought back against it, we could have actually had a chance to fight against this narrative because we had no hope, right? We were trying to win an election, or Jeremy Corbyn and his team were trying to win an election, and those of us on the left were trying to talk about the policies that could help the working class and to finally fix Britain of this neoliberal hellhole. But we were just being inundated with, oh my God, Jeremy Corbyn's going to reopen fucking Auschwitz. We're all anti-Semites, all this shit. And we had to fight against that. But we may have actually had a chance if there were some mainstream publications actually doing their job as journalists, which, to be honest, it's not their job because they're not paid to do that. They're paid to be client journalists. But had they actually done that, we could have stood a chance. So this author, probably bragging, and many others knew about this. They knew it was a factional thing. They knew it was all because of money, because money was being involved. They knew it's because they hated Jeremy Corbyn and the left and socialists, and they sat by and watched it happen. And now we have a Labour government that is indistinguishable from the Conservatives, and now some Liberals are complaining about it. Some Liberals are saying, oh my God, I can't believe Keir Starmer's scrapping the winter fuel payment. Oh my God, I can't believe it's continual austerity. Meanwhile, us lot who backed Jeremy Corbyn said, look, we need to end austerity. Jeremy Corbyn is the only route in which we can end this neoliberal shit show. And if we get rid of him, there will be forces inside the Labour Party that will swing way to the right. They will bring back austerity. There will be a David Cameron-like political party. And guess what? We were gaslit. We were called hard left. We were called cranks. And I hate to say it, but we fucking told you so.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.